Are ready to go. Thank you so much for coming to my Run Disney presentation. I am so excited to be here at Tableau. This is my second time presenting and my fourth conference, and I love Run Disney data. Now, I don't work for Run Disney. I have a complicated relationship with Run Disney. I'll share that a little bit later. I actually work for marketing. I'm in CIMA, which stands for Consumer Insights, Measurement, and Analytics. So most of my day is spent looking at marketing data. In other words, how many digital ads went out today, how many people clicked on those ads, and did it make a difference? That's what my day-to-day is like. So I have a lot of fun with Run Disney data because it's public, and so I can share it. Yay for public data. And it gives me an excuse to stretch my Tableau skills because I can post these vizzes up on Tableau Public and get some feedback from fellow runners and fellow viz enthusiasts about what works and what doesn't work. So again, thank you so much for being here today. Now let's see if I'm any good at PowerPoint. All right, so first of all, the lawyers are going to be happy that I told you that these are my views, not the views of the company. And whatever I'm talking about is not necessarily what operationally we would do for any reason whatsoever. All right, so now that's taken care of. This is me, I'm in CIMA, that's what I mentioned before. I'm 21 years with the company, so I'm a slow learner. And I've completed 10 of our Disney marathons. I've done almost 19 half marathons with Disney, and I volunteered or worked at our races for like 30 of them. So I have a lot of experience just being around our product. Recently, I started working as a contractor to the folks that do our race timing, so that's why I say I have a complicated relationship. So I take off of my Disney job to go work at Disney as a contractor. All right, yeah, okay, thank you for laughing. The jokes don't get any better. So keep that up. Let's see here, like that. I've been using Tableau since version 6 in 2010, which also means that I do things the wrong way and the backwards way, because that's what I learned first before there was a fancy way to do it. All the data here is public. It was either pulled from Run Disney or from Marathon Guide. Both of those are public sites, and if you want to learn more about data scraping, because that's fun, scraping off the web, I'm doing a Fanalytics, I'm helping out with Fanalytics on Thursday, so if anybody's there for that. Because I scraped a lot of data for this. All right, so how did this come to be? This all kind of started with a fan Facebook. Some weird stuff that people say. People say a lot of weird things on our fan Facebook group. Comments about why does Disney do something this way, or that person cheated. Okay. And I saw a viz that a data scientist that put up that's not on Disney either. He scraped the data same way I did. And I'm like, wouldn't that be nice if we did something else with it? I'm going to show you what I did along the way and how I kind of learned and responded to feedback and how the vizzes have changed. And then we'll dig into some fun charts after that. So first of all, you got to know a little bit. Yeah, doesn't she look great? There's me with. So you got to know a little bit about running. So here by hands, who has run a race, any race? All right, fantastic. I love all the healthy people. Have you run a Run Disney race? Another set of hands. Okay, so they're a little different, fewer of you. I'm going to encourage you all to run a Run Disney race because they are different. We do 4 at Walt Disney World. We have 4 big weekends. We have the marathon weekend in January. A little bit later, we have our Princess weekend and our Dark Side Star Wars themed weekend. And then we're coming up on Wine and Dine, which goes in conjunction with our Food and Wine Festival. They're themed differently. They have different challenges. Some of the courses are different. The courses change over the years. But one of the things I want you to know about racing here is when you get a lot of people trying to start a race, you got to line them up in some sort of order and hope for the best. So what I'm showing up here in the top graphic is our corralling structure, which basically means Run Disney is going to assign you to a corral placement based on your speed or your anticipated speed, and that's where you're going to start. So theoretically, faster runners start sooner, and people who don't know how they're going to run start later, or people who've never run a race, or people who know they're slow start later. The idea is to thin you out as the herd across the course, so no one's ever shoulder to shoulder trying to run their best race. So it all started with a viz. This is not Tableau. This is a product Brian Davis, who's a professor of physics at the University of South Bend, posted in the same fan site. And I saw it and I said, well, that's pretty. And wouldn't it be great if this were interactive? Because I love Tableau. So what you're looking at, I'm going to go over the layout of this chart first so you get a sense of what's going on here. This is every runner, all 20,000-ish of them, from the 25th running of the Disney Marathon, which was back in January. And the faster runners are in the bottom right. So faster runners down here. Slower up there. This is our start delay. So here it took 10 minutes before this group of people got to start, 30 minutes before these people get to start. It takes us about an hour to clear the start line, if that makes sense. So, and you can see we let people off in waves. So I send a group of people and then we wait a few seconds, and then we send the next group of people and we wait a few seconds. And again, this is all a strategy around thinning the herd. And I love this graph because it looks like people are about to take off on a race. It looks like they're gonna run. And of course, who doesn't like a rainbow? The rainbow here is actually to help you see something that's even more specific if you ran this race, which is what corral letter you were in. So the waves are not necessarily corrals. You may have more than one wave in a corral. So here, the red, these are corral A people. Orange is B. C, we'll talk about what happened at C, and then D, E, F, G, and H. So you have a letter that's assigned to your number, and then you go stand with those people. If you stand at the front of those people, you're going to be in that first wave. If you stand at the back of those people, you're going to be in the last wave. And again, the faster you are, the further down you are, and the slower you are, the further up you are. So it's a really interesting visual, but what can we do? What can we learn from this? And what's it telling us? And can it be improved by putting it into Tableau? So I played around with it for a little while. My first attempt, we'll go into the charts later, I just have pictures of them now. So this was my first attempt at looking at it. So is something different going on for the different types of runners? Because we have people that came, and I want to say just for the marathon. They're just doing a marathon. It's a very strange nomenclature, but there are other folks that ran a half marathon the day before and they're running the marathon that day. So we call those our goofy runners. And then there's a whole nother subset of runners that ran all 4 of our races that weekend. They ran a 5K on Thursday, they ran a 10K on Friday, on Saturday they ran a half marathon, and then on Sunday they ran the full marathon, and those are our dopey people. Because who wants to get up 4 mornings in a row and stand in the Epcot parking lot at 4 a.m.? That's just dopey, right? So it turns out that sharing that might be too much. I mean, you see these are a lot of stuff going on, lots of controls. You can change the corral assignment. Over here, I did the color thing to see, so we could look at the corrals again by color. Over here, this is just the runners who started in a corral earlier than the one they were assigned, also known as the cheater chart. So one of RunDisney's policies is that if you're assigned a corral, you can actually go backwards. You can run with people that are slower than you if your friend, was assigned to a different corral. But if you are assigned to your corral, you can't go forward. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. About 1,300 people jumped ahead. I don't know if any of them or all of them are cheating. I know that they moved ahead of their assignment. Some of them for valid reasons. They went up to race relations and said, hey, this happened, and managed to convince someone to give them a different sticker and go ahead. And so some of those may be legitimate, some of those are people that are jumping a fence. I don't know. So this was my first pass at it, and I posted it up there on Tableau Public. Tableau Public users? Everybody Tableau Public? All right, good. Like to see Tableau Public being used. And I got a lot of feedback. I love feedback. So here's some of the other charts that I put up there. Bar charts, because who doesn't love a bar chart? It all starts with a bar chart. Is volume was the question I was looking at. How many runners are running each type of challenge? And what's their pace difference, overall average pace? I thought that would be something interesting to look at. Turns out there isn't a lot of variability between men and women in our race, or whether you ran the challenge or not. The most interesting thing about getting those numbers was converting time data into numerical data so that you could calculate the average. So turning hours, minutes, and seconds into an integer and then doing the calculation on that. Up in the upper right-hand corner, that kind of heat map was to try and look at, did you start where you were supposed to start? So if you're in the dark shaded area, you kind of ran about the time that we expected you to run. If you were in one of the gray areas, you either ran faster than the people around you or slower if you're at the bottom than the people around you. And that's kind of interesting as you think about, well, should I have been in this corral or not? And then this is another one of my cheater charts. So I love Sankey diagrams. They're a pain in the butt to build, but they're really pretty. So the Sankey diagram, this is the corral you were assigned. This is the corral you started with. So you're allowed to go down, actually here, up to down. So A's are at the bottom. We learned how to flip the axis later. So A's are at the bottom. You're allowed to go backwards, so you're allowed to go to H, but you're not allowed to go forward. So these folks going down here, they call it, that's kind of cheating. But what I did find out is these lines are roughly the same size. So in terms of volume of people, I guess for operationally, I don't really care. It's small enough that it doesn't really matter, that the right number of people are moving backwards and forwards. I still have roughly the same number of people in the different corral categories. And finally, the one thing every runner wants to know is, did they run a negative split? So all the dark blue runners were ones that achieved a negative split, which I have to say is really hard at a Disney race, because there's so many other things to do. So after the Disney Marathon weekend, I said, well, let's see if I can do this faster and better when Princess rolls around in about a month. And so I got a little crazy with the theming, but who doesn't like pink? It's my signature color. And I looked at some of the same charts, and I'm still missing the most important thing, which is down here in this chart. I keep playing around with this chart because something interesting is happening and I haven't figured it out yet. But the heat map kind of reveals similar information about volumes of when people started and when they should have started. Now we flip the axis around, so the A's are at the top and the H's are at the bottom. That's a little easier to read. And you can actually see the volumes here. So 504 folks were supposed to start in A, and 415 did. I feel okay with that. That's okay by me. And my H got a little bigger, and that's fine. If you want to move to the back, that's perfectly okay. It's still thinning out the crowd. So I posted this on the fan sites, and I get some feedback, and specifically about a challenge we have. Let's see. Oh, so this star right here, the one that kind of stands out by itself, the woman who ran that race, her name was Arwen, and she passed 85% of the field. She started dead last and passed 85% of the other runners on the course. That's phenomenal. It's a crowded race. And she's a fast runner. She belongs up in A, but the fan group that loves our races, they have a challenge called Dead Last Start. And she was participating and won by a mile. So you see, she started here last, and because she's so low, you can see that she ran fast. But you can't see from this chart 85%. It doesn't look anywhere near as miraculous as it actually was. And so I wanted to dig a little bit more into that, but I couldn't figure out how to do the calculation. So hold that thought later. The other thing that happens kind of weird with a race, you're wearing a bib, it's on your front. There's some mats and some places that pick up the magnetic stuff. Not too different from when we put our phones on and our badges and we get admitted. So you're running along, and if your bib kind of slipped over here, or it's on your back where it's not supposed to be, or something else happened, the mat could not read that you crossed the mat. So your bib and the mat didn't talk to each other, but you went through. That could happen, and it's very rare. We're down at under 1%. of the time does this happen, and it's really only important to me if it happens on the starting mat. So I have a calculation that I put in there that says if your net time and your total time are the same in the data, are you an elite runner, or are you someone who missed the starting mat, whose bib didn't read? And so I got to clear those out. So I create a little calculation that lets me make that comparison. I called it likely elite ? And I posted this. Now, lo and behold, someone downloads my viz off of Tableau Public and writes me a note, says, likely elite, you know they're elite by their bib number. So she hadn't read the calculation or known what I was trying to do, because it was my own little shorthand. So I should have said something longer like, I think you might be elite, or I think you might have started, or I think your bib might, I haven't found the right descriptor of this variable yet, but it was really funny to get feedback back that told me that I had named my variable incorrectly. So it made me laugh, and now I know to be a little bit more cautious about what I put up on Tableau Public in terms of how I name things. So that was kind of funny. All right, so then Star Wars rolls around. I got really crazy with the theming. Those are the little dark side emblems, yeah. And then I got real dark here. I still haven't noticed what's interesting about Run Disney races yet, but it's starting to come to me. There's a peak of 2 runners per second coming across the finish line. That's a lot of people, that's a lot of humanity at once. And we still got our nice cigar-ish shape looking on that far chart. So anyway, you can see they're all kind of coming down. I'm doing fewer charts, I'm keeping the same ones. I got rid of the sand key because it looked like a cheater chart, but you can kind of see what's going on with this bar chart on the bottom. I put the cheaters down here, so they're at the bottom of my chart, so you can kind of sense their volume without knowing their names or their identities. So that was one way of trying to share the information but take away the visibility of the exact people who moved. So finally I said, well, okay, so we have this big data competition at Disney. I'm like, I'm gonna do something for the big data competition. And I decided to do a viz on all the Disney marathons that I could find. We've been publishing the results, and there's a marathonguide.com has been kind enough to, they keep all the marathon results. You might be familiar with the website if you run marathons. It's a great way of finding out, is there anybody slower than me? How many people are in this race? What do people think of it? Well, what I did is I pulled all the results from these races. So this is 259,000 finishers across the different years to see what is changing about our races. And the color coding here tells you something different happened that year in terms of operational. So those red boxes on the far right, your left, we used to run the half marathon and the marathon on the same day. So everybody lined up together and we let you go. And you got to the halfway point, we handed you a Donald Duck medal. You got all the way to the end, we handed you a Mickey Mouse. But then you see that one box goes down just before the orange, and we'll bring up the viz in a second. So at this point, my half marathoners are more prevalent than my fulls, and what's gonna happen next is that you're gonna end up with a race full of half marathoners and your marathon's gonna kind of go away. So they went really bold with their decision, Run Disney did, and they split them on half. They said, we'll run our half marathon on Saturday and we'll run our full on Sunday. And that's the first year they did that. They called it the Goofy, and people signed up. I did. I ran that the first year, because what could be stupider than getting up and running 2 races? And so I did that, and so we had the Goofy and you see the race continue to grow, which was nice. And then some other changes happened. That yellow box is the first time that we decided to try and do a wave start, trying to thin you out. And you can see how well that worked. And we made some modifications. In the blue years, we have slightly different modifications. Purple, another change happened. And these gray years, you can see even other types of operational changes. So what I wanted to show and what I want to try to answer is what's going on with Disney races and how have they changed over time. So I think, yeah, so what I want to do is I'm going to switch to Tableau, so bear with me while I screw this up, and go over here to Tableau, and we'll pull open this chart. Let's put this here. So you can see the difference between the men and the women. We're about 50-50, which is nice. Didn't used to be that way. But let's look at our first year of data. Now, the race didn't start in 2000. The race actually started in 1994. But prior to 2000, I only have analog records. I have books of results. And I have started to digitize those, but it's a labor-intensive process of scanning them in, turning them into data, checking the data against what's in the book, and then doing the next page. So this will take me a while before I can get the rest of the data in there. You can see in 2000, it took 10 minutes to clear the start line. We used to think that was an interminable period of time. We had no idea what was about to happen. 10 minutes to get you all underway. Things I put into this viz were how many total people are there and what was the temperature that day. That day it was 59 degrees. And then you can see it took about a little bit longer the next year and a little bit longer the next year. Now keep your eye on the bottom chart. This is the number of runners. This histogram is the number of runners by the time they finish, the overall time. So this is a time of day chart. And this is what I'm expecting to see. I'm expecting to see fast people here, kind of a peak in the middle. You know, you can see the pace group effect as I go through, which is kind of fun. Hey, those folks were all trying to beat that 5:30 marker, and they did. Good for them. So you kind of see stuff like that. So here's 6 hours and 7 hours. Our race has a 7-hour limit, but that 7 hours starts after the last runner starts. So here it took us a little over, 12 minutes to clear, and we had some runners that actually managed to make it in around 7:18. That makes sense. I can agree with that. I'm good. And so the race grows and it gets a little longer. It keeps skewing this way. So what happened in our first goofy year? So we have a whole lot more marathoners. This cracks me up. I don't know what poor George was doing. He was like in the porta potty or something, but he started long after everybody else. I still haven't figured out. I want to ask him. So if anybody knew George Solomon, he was 23 in 2006. Ask him where he was. We don't know. But you can see we have this nice, normal looking distribution of finish rates. And so then our race continues to grow in size, and we learn about maybe wave starting. And this was our first attempt at wave starting. I tried to show you where the waves were. They weren't real even, and they're rather large. And then we still have some people that are out here, you know, wandering about. Whatever happened to Christian? He took a long time. Maybe he was at the porta potty too. So the next year we said, well, the wave starts work, but let's see if we can make them like compact. And so we got a little bit better operationally in terms of starting in waves. And then finally, this is our biggest year ever in terms of number of finishers. I don't know if it's the biggest year in terms of number of starters, because that's not in the data, but it took us, this was our record year in terms of, to date, of how long it took to get the race started. Notice how this curve is like starting to lean this way. And it's just, we're getting slower and slower. Now here when we get to purple, we actually increased the number of waves again. So we went from 4 to 8 and then 8 to 16. Again, trying to thin you out, trying to see what is the right number of people per wave, how long should they be between the last person and the next person starting. In other words, what should the gap between the waves be? And this is the first time we see this behavior. So 145 runners took 8 hours and 3 minutes. And that is curious to me, because I'm expecting a normal looking distribution of finish rates, and I'm not getting it. So I don't really know what's going on, but I suspect that our runners are doing something other than running. They're making use of their time on our course some other way. It could be standing in line for a photo. Maybe they went on an attraction. Maybe they bought a beer or a coffee. I have done all of these things on the course, so I am not throwing shade. I have ridden rides. I've stood in line for a photo, for a character. I work at Disney. Now let's go with this again. I stood in line in a race for a photo with a character. But now lots of people do it. The race has amazing lines for our character photo opportunities because they are amazing opportunities. Our PhotoPass cast puts together great scenes for you to be a part of. And so What changed next is that we changed our photo vendor from Marathon Photo, where you had to pay by every single photo, to our Photo Pass, which is an internal vendor. And if you're an annual pass holder, you already are paying for Photo Pass. So now you have these two conflicting goals: run my race as fast as I can, or get as many pictures as I can. I got 8 hours to finish this thing, let's see what happens. So what we've noticed, or at least what I'm noticing, is that our runner behavior is changing to meet these two conflicting goals, and our line is continuing to skew this way. So 150 runners, not a big deal when you're thinking about 20,000, but what happens when the line gets bigger and bigger? This year, not as much. I haven't figured out why. There's a little spike here. And then it shoots up again. And then if you look at just last year, there we go. It's like this ramp up to the hockey, and then we close the line. So that's what I kind of learned from this, and I thought, wow, this would be kind of fun to share. This viz is one of the other things I learned from the Star Wars viz is people like, I can't find my dot. That was the feedback I got. I can't find my dot. So from that I learned to put in a search. So if you're a runner, you probably know who Jeff Galloway is. He's an Olympian, and he's done all of our races. He gets to start at the front, and he's had some slower times and some faster times. Like I said, I've run 10 of these, so I'm in here. And you can tell that my relationship with runDisney is complicated, because sometimes I'm all the way in the back. But the back is where the party is. So if you have run our races, you're here in this set. You can go on Tableau Public. All of this stuff is posted. Go find yourself and take pictures of your mark. So you can see my different finish times. So here I was a young pup doing a 6:43, and then I've had some slower times. And then there were these days back here when I was almost zippy by my logic, but not by marathoning logic. So this was a lot of fun to put together, and it's it resonates with a lot of people. And so I really love what I did with it. But then Monday I met with the Tableau doctor. Has anybody had a Tableau doctor appointment? Did you solve your problem? Oh yeah, solve your problem or no? No, solved? Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that. So I had a great Tableau doctor appointment. And so you guys are gonna see it. Did you guys go to the Devs on Stage this morning? All right, so my problem was solved with set actions. Sorry, so let's go see if I can do this. All right. So we're back to the Princess results. I got 2 minutes, I can get this done. So I told you about Arwen. This is Arwen. So the first thing they said was, you know, your chart's all wrong, and they flipped my axis on me. So before, the faster runners were at the bottom, and now the faster runners are at the top. I actually do agree with them. I think this makes more sense, but if you were thinking before of how it was, now you gotta modulate. So with action sets, I can actually pick any runner. Here's Arwen. She's that star that we saw before down in the bottom, and you can see the 84%, 85% of the field that she passed. But I can actually now, with action sets, calculate that for any runner. So there's Shelly's number of people she passed. This person passed 50% of the field. This person passed. So if they started in front of you and were still faster than you, you didn't pass them. If they started behind you and never caught up, you didn't pass them. This is only people you passed. So your opportunity to pass people is greater in the back than it is in the front. And so you can also see, I'll go back to Arwa, see how many people, so this little curve tells you how many people pass people. So most people, the top line, didn't pass very many people, and you can see where they are. And then the people who passed a lot of people keep going up through here. So the bin is the numbers are not great. I got to work on how I describe these a little bit better, but the further you go in down this direction, the more people you have passed, to the point where you pass 85% of the field, or about 17,000 people. So here, 82 people passed 6,900 other people, if that's the way to read this. Again, I got to work on my labels. But we did just do this in a doctor session. So I wanted to show you that, since it does employ set actions, which we all learned about this morning, and that was the solution to my problem. So anyway, I want to thank you for coming to my session and listen to me talk about Disney data and runDisney data, and sign up for a Disney race because they're lots of fun. And if you have any questions about runDisney, come up and talk to me. Thank you.